all kinds of other new options that the universe, God, energy will come fill, and whatever is next, whatever that is supposed to do or be. It is that powerful.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And there's not 3 screens, there's only 2.
Yes,
so
sir.
We solved one problem.
The other problem is going to be which way I'm standing, because I'm going to naturally drift. That's actually not too bad. I might just stick with my normal stance.
And face. Well, what we're doing is we are 1/3 of the way to your live studio goal for the show.
Sir.
So for this show, this is 1/3 of the way. I don't know why. We've got a pilot that has her own plane on the show, Eileen joining us. I don't know why you didn't just fly down here today, Eileen, and then we could have really solved the problem. I mean, right?
That'd have been awesome, except that they had other plans for me for the past week. So,
I mean, come on. I know that thing's just sitting out back. You got the keys. Is that, I think I see the keys hanging on the bookshelf right over there. Ain't that all you got to do? It's just like I go out and get in my truck. And ain't that same?
I wish. Don't we all?
Typical pilot. All they do is laugh when I ask those dumb questions, I tell you, because they know it's so dumb and so untrue. Yeah. So, Eileen, it is great to have you. I was just reading, and let me see how you worded it in your bio about the clouds. What is it about that view when you're up at 40,000 feet that just keep pulling you back up there?
Yeah, I call it my front row seat to the universe and my backstage pass. It's my backstage pass to its creation. Yep, that's what I call it and how I refer to it.
So what is it? Tell us.
It never gets old or boring for me because it is never the same every single time. So flying is not my job and what I do. It is very much a part and extension of who I am. It's a gift that I came out of the birth canal afforded with in my DNA, and it never ever occurred to me growing up in that what do you want to do when you grow up thing. I just always knew I was going to fly airplanes. What it is it's literally that. I literally get to see our universe and experience it in a time and place, in a dimension, in a perspective that there's not too many of us, that walk on this earth that do. I mean, there are thousands, obviously, of pilots, but I experienced it, I think, a little differently. And in particular, I talk about, and one of the pieces I've written about is what's called the Terminator. And the Terminator is, unlike the old Arnold days, the Terminator
with AI going on and everything, I don't know if we want to go down that hole.
It is the defined line around the earth that divides light from dark. When you think about take the earth and the sun shining on it, the sun can only illuminate half of that sphere at any one time, which obviously rotates and moves around the sun. So that line is constantly changing. And I have had the incredible privilege of flying in the Terminator many times. And it's just to be sitting there in the cockpit and looking one way and literally seeing whether it's sunset or sunrise. And in the other way, you're looking at the dark. And so it's very much a literal experience as well as a metaphorical one that, to me, very much parallels my life anyways, and I suspect most people's lives. And we only get to see the light because of the existence of the dark and vice versa. We get to see the dark because of the existence of the light. And
you're kind of teasing into what I, it's kind of my go-to question whenever we have pilots on, talking about that perspective. I'm not going to try to say back those pretty words you said, because, obviously you were up there, you were thinking those nice, beautiful thoughts, but I'm always curious then, that kind of moment, that kind of perspective, how does that carry into the rest of your life? Because it's one thing to go up on the mountaintop and you see and think, gosh, the world is beautiful. It's another thing to think about how beautiful the world is at your desk job or whatever it is. How has that affected you in other areas of your life?
So for me, actually, it crystallized for me out of, as a breast cancer survivor, I had a particularly rough go of it, with, my surgery and my bilateral mastectomy and reconstruction, and ended up in a situation where, emergency surgeries and stuff. And I don't want to overstate it as there wasn't some near death experience and here's the tunnel with the light and, woo, strange sounds or whatever. But there was just my soul had to make, for me, it's a soul level thing. My soul had literally made a decision which way I was going to go, towards the dark or towards the light. And it was also very much a physical experience that I had as well. And that crystallized for me around that for me, from then on, for the last 10, 11 years that it's been, has been the pursuit of trying to figure out what is this purpose of this soul that was put, whatever your belief is, whether you want to call it universe or God or energy, it's all the same for me. We as humans are limited by our vocabulary and whatever language we speak, as well as the ability for our brains to articulate a concept. And we struggle with the vocabulary and the lexicon to be able to do that. But for me, there was a reason that this soul was put inside this human form of a body, and figuring out what that purpose is. And there are things that have come and gone, and now I've got some things going on now that make me feel like this is part of my purpose of why I'm on this earth. So it all crystallizes around that for me. With anytime I'm sitting there experiencing the Terminator, it snaps me back to out of the realm of whatever mundane things or pain in the butt things are going on or great things or whatever. It just stops. It stops everything else and makes me focus and go, oh yeah, that's right. I'm sitting here literally looking at, first our world and this earth came about first out of that light and the energy of the universe. And I am sitting here experiencing it in real time and being reminded of that origin, from where I come. And then again, physically and metaphorically, I'm in an airplane going somewhere. So where am I going?
So is it, because I love this, it's that awe-inspiring beauty. And whether you have it at 40,000 feet, a mountaintop, like Camden said, sitting on the beach and sunrise, sunset, all that, is it it makes me more in touch with who I am because I see how small I am? Or is it more of I see the beauty and I can pursue the beauty? Is there a either or is it an and maybe?
I never have the thought about, gosh, how small I am. It's kind of the opposite. The farther away you get from the surface of the earth, the more defined that line is, the Terminator is. So you can't really see it sitting down here on a beach or even on a mountaintop. Maybe Everest, I don't know. Haven't been on Everest. But it's really only seen by the farther you get away from the surface of the earth, which the farther I get away from the day-to-day mundaneness, the more my perspective is able to broaden and recall and remember that there's bigger things. And I'm a part of something much bigger, and this energy that directs everything in my life And again, whether that's for you or anyone, God or energy or the universe or something else entirely, that directs, and I'm a part of that and draws me towards it. And so the farther I get away, the more defined it becomes, and things can crystallize and get greater clarity. My curiosity is able to, I'm able to think more and hopefully get greater insights and understanding and answers to questions. So the clarity and the curiosity, really, in those moments when you're just sitting there droning, and eventually something transpires that you got to come back and do your job, the reason you're sitting there. So
that red light flashing on the dashboard.
Make a radio call, look at your gas, look at your fuel, whatever, plan, start talking to the other pilots, start planning a descent and what you're doing and that kind of thing, handle a passenger situation, whatever. But there's very much always, in those moments, there's very much an opportunity to just go, whoa. And no matter how many times I see it, it takes me and it enables me the ability to step out in a way from day-to-day stuff. And even if it's just for a moment, reflect and reconnect about like the what's really important kind of thing. So it's never an issue about I feel small compared to this grandeur. And it's not necessarily a beauty thing, although it's incredible, but it's not like I'm lost in some beauty moment. It's just, again, the awareness of knowing that there is this entirety of this universe that I'm a part of, and I happen to be living out a purpose on this one, in the big picture of things, this one speck of a moment of time. And what is this difference that I'm supposed to be able to make and do in this speck of time that I'm here, in this, my soul is in this form of this human body.
Talking about that perspective, it always makes me think, the words I always like for it is like the macro and the micro, right? That macro perspective, understanding that. And then I think the really interesting then problem of like the application comes from, you can't just live in the macro. I like the joke, that's the hermit up on the mountain just sitting there and it's like, I understand everything and it's world's at peace and all that. It's like, yeah, but you ain't eating, what's happening, when is the last time you talked with your family, whatever micro examples might be pressing inside of that.
Right.
When you talk about like the application of purpose, that all takes place in that micro. And I'm curious how you kind of balance that. 'Cause I think it's just an interesting thing. A lot of stress, I think, as people comes from when we're spending time in the macro when we need to be in the micro and vice versa. And so how do you kind of choose those moments, or even how do you shift gears back and forth on that? What are your thoughts there?
That's a real challenge, the shifting gears, the back and forth, and because there are, it's very easy for all of us to get consumed by, as you're using the term, the micros. There's plenty of things biting at our ankles constantly. The beauty for me is that, I have this job that forces me away from those. And in the world of pilots, we are taught and we are trained to compartmentalize and to leave the micros, as you call them, behind. Because those things become, a distraction and safety hazards. And when those, I refer to them as boxes, when those boxes overflow into my flying box that I'm working right now on doing, that becomes a problem. So I have to be able to set things aside and focus on doing my job, which again, for me, is not just a job. It is what feeds my soul. And so I actually feel better. I have a physiological response to taking off and flying and saying, who gets to do this? Damn, I do. We do, and that's what, for me, keeps the micros from taking over. Am I answering your question? Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, yeah, and actually, it sets up another thing I was thinking about, which I always like to not pick on folks. That makes it sound meaner, but it's always this, like, whenever you find your thing, and it's like, look, this thing helps me with my perspective and all of that. It's like, okay, well, then how do you help other people? How do we bottle that up? Like, Dad, I make fun of you of like, yeah, your time in special forces might have made you a great leader, but we can't just drop everyone in the army for 10 years. Like, we got things to do. Rugby. Everyone gets to go out and play rugby or coach rugby. My perspective, it's limiting. Now, this ties in, Eileen, to your writing side of things, right? I'm curious how in your perspective, how you can, bottle that up, that pilot perspective, the magic pill, whatever you want to call, whatever analogy or metaphor you want to go with on that, of to try to pass that perspective, pass that wisdom along to other people, or do we all just need to spend some time, flying up there with the Terminator?
And a lot of people will say to me, they'll talk to me about that this is my passion, and I'm like, it's not. I never see it as passion, and perhaps that's just based upon my own idea, construct, paradigm, whatever, of what passion is. When people say, "Oh, you got to find your passion," I'm okay with not having some all-consuming, quote unquote, passion that drives everything I do, and I live in endless pursuit of this passion or doing this passion. I'm okay with and if you ever get the chance to go, Google on and go find Elizabeth Gilbert's talk that she gave about people that don't have passion, and it's okay, it's fabulous, and if you're not somebody that, if you're wondering, like, I don't have a passion, I really need to, I'm supposed to have a passion, I should have a passion, and you end up shooting all over yourself because I don't have a passion, just go find that video and watch it, and then you'll oh, okay, I'm all right, I'm good. We don't all have to have this, passion that somehow is going to make you run faster, jump higher, and leap tall buildings. To me, it's the term I use is feed my soul. What are the things that feed my soul? And yes, writing is also one of those. And it's funny when I sit down, after I've just been hair on fire and a ton of stuff, and I can't seem to see the forest for the trees, and I'm struggling to breathe sometimes, and which is another really good thing to do is just breathe. All the woo-woo people talk about breath work and everything. Okay, you can do all the, get trained and do all the, do meditation. I'm not disparaging that at all. Yes, absolutely. But just breathe. Just go sit down and just literally just breathe. And
good starting point.
Get trained in breath work. Absolutely wonderful. Do it, whatever. But if you're like, you don't need another thing to should on yourself about, oh, I should be doing yoga and I should be meditating and I should be doing breath work. And this is like the messaging we're bombarded with these days of all the things we should be doing in order to have this wellness and health and everything. And all you end up doing is driving yourself crazy and feeling worse about stuff. So just for me, it's just find those few things that feed your soul. You can call them a passion or not or whatever, but if they just feed your soul and they're just what makes you remember, it's, yeah, okay, this is good. I'm good. I don't, another thing I have is I call it Eileen's rule of one. And this came out of the whole recovering from breast cancer. Is after I came out of the storm of the surgeries and the botched reconstructions, everything. I was so disabled I couldn't even put on my own socks. And I ended up in a place where I had to, on my own, I had to figure out what I then became Eileen's rule of one. Just do one thing each day, no matter how mundane, how inane it may seem to anybody else. Jettison the word should from your life, and then just be okay with just doing one thing today. And if one thing, which was my case, was all you can do is walk to the mailbox and get the mail, and that's your one thing today, great. Do your one thing and be okay with it. And then, find a way to just do one thing and be okay with it. And out of that, you'll figure out, oh, okay, I can breathe. Now, what is it that does feed my soul? So for me, flying airplanes, well, there was a lot of years I couldn't fly airplanes because I was grounded and I couldn't even put on my own socks. And and but one of the things that did emerge out of that was I found that writing, and that was not something that I was always I was the one that would write the family Christmas letter or in my own Christmas letters and stuff like that. I was inspired by Irma Bombeck as a kid, and sort of tried to parody her style and stuff. And I always find now that when I'm in the deep throes of the storm, the life storms of, too many things going on, too many people coming at me, too many shoulds happening, invariably I'll sit down and I'll start writing, and all of a sudden I'll be, several hours later. And for me, I write in my head and then getting it down on paper, whether it's actual or electronic or whatever, is sort of like a transcription thing that happens. And I come out of that whole process though, and I sit back and I go, boy, I feel better. And I'm always like, why don't I ever remember that when I'm in the heat of the battle, I should sit down and write my way out of it. It's usually something that sort of happens after the fact and reminds me, I should have done that sooner. I'd have felt better sooner. And in doing so over time, I realized this is another thing that feeds my soul. So now, should I have this disciplined writing practice that everybody says you should do? You should write 3 hours a day. You should do this. You should have this kind of a desk and this kind of a chair and this kind of a setup. There's tons of blogs out there about all the things you should do. And so, sure, I'm working towards those things. But in the meantime, all the, as you call them, the micro things, continue to consume life and whether they're distractors or just things got to get done, stuff's got to get done. And so out of those, I've found this flying and writing are my go-to places to step away from all of the shoulds. You call them the micros. And the last thing I'll say, as far as the other way I help deal with and sift and filter and decide on all these shoulds, these micros, for me, I just got to tell you, it's the serenity prayer. I mean, if you're that wherever it originated from, if it came out of 12-step programs or somewhere else, it doesn't really matter. It's a fabulous life coping tool of figuring out what are the things I can change and what can I not change, and making decisions from there as far as dealing with the shoulds, the micros, and how to handle them, how to prioritize, don't have to keep all the balls in the air. Just got to figure out which ones are the glass ones and which ones are the rubber ones that can hit the floor and bounce again. Those kinds of constantly assessing. For me, I use the serenity prayer to do that. And that's what helps keep those micros and those shoulds. Doesn't mean all the time I've got everything all figured out and in perfect balance. Heck no. It's been a heck of a year in my case. And there's been a lot of long stretches of times when, I was failing woefully at trying to handle all of that stuff. But invariably, for me, I come back to the flying and the writing, and it's where my soul gets fed, and it's where I can emotionally and mentally and disappear to, and physically as well, and go reconnect with the things, with the experience, with the energy that feeds my soul. And then in doing so, re-energize, recharge, and come back and let's go at it again. And let's go another couple rounds with the micros and the shoulds, and figuring out which are the glass balls and the rubber balls. And so long answer to a short question, but that's how I do it.
Well, you ask a rhetorical question, you're going to get a long answer. That's the math. I'd love to do a little bit of comparison analysis, if you don't mind, between flying and writing, because you said it. There's only so many people in the world that get to fly, that have taken that path and get to go up, and maybe and there's probably a smaller number that get to see the Terminator.
Yeah.
because there's a lot of other friends and folks that fly that, never get above 20,000 feet. Right.
Right.
But everybody can pick up a pen and write something.
Yep.
So could we do a little bit of analysis in that,
Sure.
in that comparison?
So for me now, at this point, I've been doing the flying thing a long time. So that's something that I'm really good at. And I've built all of the, think like an athlete, all the muscle memory. I've practiced and trained. And I'm now at that performance level where I can just go have, the adrenaline and the hormonal and the energetic surges that come from, a gold medal performance type thing. I can just go do it now. Writing for me is still very much, I'm still building and learning. I don't have a PhD in English literature or whatever. I haven't, but you're exactly right that, pun intended, you're exactly right that everyone can write. And what's the best way, I think, is to stop thinking and just write. And in particular, just start with your story. And I've said that many times as I talk to folks, and they immediately say, oh, I don't have a story. I don't have a story. No. Everybody has a story. And so just start, just sit down and think for yourself, even if you just start with chronological. Where were you born? And here's a little tip as you begin to write, and it gives you the ability to shut out the rest of the world, literally close your door, tell the kids to whatever, go put on Netflix or go downstairs or whatever, and just go to a place where you can just start emptying the catalog that's sitting up here. And as you do it, I talk about the six senses. I talk about as just start pulling words out to tell a story, any story. You don't think about writing a whole book or whatever. Just start writing a story. Pick one from any point in life and just tell a story that's your story. It doesn't matter if you think everybody else has done it. It's not about that. It's about you and yours. And in the context of the traditional five senses, sight, smell, touch, hearing, taste, and then sixth sense is time. So just talk on paper, keyboard, pen, whatever it is, sticky notes. If you think of something, I speak into my phone. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a hospital room or on an airplane or whatever and whipped out my phone, my little, that notes app, whatever, and just had something that needed to come out right then and there that I didn't want to lose, and down it went. That's writing. Writing is not like I need to suddenly sit down and become, Updike or whoever.
Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah, Ernest Hemingway all of a sudden.
Well, I should have rum in my glass if I was Ernest Hemingway.
Hey, the glass of wine works great. Whatever it is, but you just, and it just, there are things that come out of that in terms of you start breathing. You start breathing less erratically when you're racing around dealing with all the micros and the shoulds and whatever. You just start breathing again. You disappear into yourself, into your own head, into your own memories, into your own thoughts, your own feelings. And again, you start exploring. So what were those, what was the time frame of this, and what were those five senses? And you don't edit. You just stop. Don't think, just write. There's no editing. There's no English teacher. There's nobody grading the paper. You just do it. For those I did not grow up journaling. I absolutely wish I had. If you're a journaler, then you already know that feeling of going and getting lost in a thought in a journal. If you're not a journaler, see if you can go pick one up for the holidays and start in the new year. But don't make it a New Year's resolution about something you should do. Don't make it a should. But
I'll just, one of the things that I love to do, and I haven't shared this in a while with folks, but I call it free thinking. And it is literally just taking a piece of paper and a pen or pencil and just writing what's ever in your head and just write that physical motion. And then depending on what you want to do with it, I've had some friends who they use I get my words, yellow legal pad and write, rip it off, wad it up, put it in the trash. Think about that. And what it does, that physical effort, whether it's 15 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, whatever, you've just dumped your mind.
Yeah.
All thoughts in your mind, because that's all you're doing. That's why I call it free thinking.
Yeah.
It's, I didn't pour myself enough water before I sat down to do this, and now I'm going to have to be thirsty when I'm done doing this. And you're just writing this crap down. But that physical motion, what you find is thoughts just start to flow. Yeah. Sometimes you don't want to throw that paper away. There might be some, what a great idea for business next year or this week or whatever.
Just tell a story. It's about the storytelling. Just tell a story. Tell a story of the birth of a child. Tell a story of when you got your first dog, your first cat. Tell a story of a trip that you went on. Tell a story of falling in love. Tell a story of grief. Just tell a story. It's about the storytelling. And it's out of that storytelling that there are physiological things that happen inside, the free thinking that you talk about, that releases weight, it releases stress, it releases expectations, it releases the crap, and it falls by the wayside because you disappear into that story, and it's a piece of you that you're getting to now articulate, even if it's on paper, that's coming out of you, and it's no longer buried and hidden and lost. And you never know your words. None of us ever know how our words. If you're writing and you're just telling a story, who knows where that may end up, or somebody picks it up and reads it, or you end up with a compendium of these stories, and after you die, your family or your loved ones find it and they learn something about you, and you still have the ability to affect somebody else's life and change a life. You never know the footprints that your words will leave in another person's mind and on another person's heart, whether you intended it or not. That's the power of the storytelling that is so transformative and opens up hearts, opens up minds to all kinds of other new options that the universe, God, energy will come fill, and with whatever is next, whatever that is supposed to do or be. It is that powerful.
It's so true. And I'm really curious, talking about writing and the comparison with flying. One thing that interestingly came to mind, and I think this is more, it probably falls in that should category, like you were saying, but it's a little bit more of the, taking it more seriously in the writing versus just trying to get the story out. And I think that's a whole other aspect of the conversation, but is the imposter syndrome part of it, which is writing because, you want to add something. There's always this weird push and pull to me when it comes to that of, it's like, well, everyone has a story, but it's like, but I need to write mine. It's like, well, but if everyone has it, then it's like, is mine that important? Or am I, I got a book published, like here to use the example, talking about how many pilots there are in the world. I don't, if we weren't on the same computer, I'd do a quick Google and have numbers for you. But it's like, whatever number the amount of pilots are in the world, there are a lot more people that have probably written books, and a lot more people, even if you take that from books down to just like papers and those kind of things, it's a lot of people. Then what's your interpretation then of that, like imposter syndrome from that? because if everyone's writing, then it's like, well, then why is mine important? Am I really that special with all this compared to, if you're a pilot, it's like, I threw a seven, I don't even know my plane, 747. I flew this. It's like, there's a very real, like, no, I did it. I'm real. There's not that as much with the writing. I think we feel the same thing with podcasting sometimes. That if anyone could just start a podcast, then what makes this so special? What's so cool about this? So all those kind of questions can kind of swirl. What are your thoughts with that comparison?
So yes, that's very much. Certainly, I had those questions, and many, I guess I'll say, people have that when it comes to their own storytelling. If you're talking just personal storytelling, obviously there's a gazillion different genres. Forget the storytelling. Just go create a story, a fiction story. If tap into your own creativity. If you feel you want to write a historical story of something that's from your town that you haven't seen or heard before, whatever it may be. But for the scenario that we're discussing of writing our own personal stories, writing things down, that who cares, so some of that becomes that when it's like, well, everybody's written. What could I possibly have to add that Oprah and Elizabeth Gilbert and Brene Brown haven't already said, right?
Well, you put it like that.
So, but that's sort of ego looking outward kind of thing. That's not, first of all, again, I'll come back to, we don't know. We have no idea what sort of footprints our words will leave in another person's mind and on another person's heart. We don't. So why am I writing this story? It's because without it, our history, the totality of our history is not complete. So can I just give you an example?
Yeah, please.
You were talking, for example, like how many pilots are there? All right. So, for example, you could take in the U.S., you could take every woman pilot in the country that's a commercial pilot or an instructor pilot and put them all in Nationals ballpark in Washington, D.C., and the ballpark would be half full. So, yes, there are a lot of us, but there really aren't. And so when you think about that in the context of 330 million population, that's a lot of individual stories and that are unique. So there, and while there are several, I couldn't hazard a guess on a number of books and that have been written and blogs by women pilots and those kind of things, they haven't been told. And without your story, let's just talk your family, whatever, your family history is incomplete. There are things we don't know without, we'll broaden it out here. The movie Hidden Figures, the women Air Force service pilots from World War II. There's a phenomenal book called The Women with Silver Wings that's being made into a movie right now. There's a movie that's coming out on Netflix 3 days from now about the battalion of black women in World War II who were, the Army constituted a whole battalion of women whose sole job was to unscrew the mess of the mail system. Soldiers were not getting their mail all over the world. And morale was dying and, all kinds of bad things were happening. And it's a phenomenal story that's coming to the screen that everybody's very excited about. So every time we have another one of these, now that's big screen. Is what I'm going to write end up on a Netflix or whatever? No, but that's not why I'm writing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Well, I happen to, one of the projects, so we'll get to talking about that. I absolutely think there's a prospect of the book that I and a group of women are working on has potential for one of these. But every time one of these comes out, whether it's a movie or it's an article or it's a book or whatever, people go, wow, I had no idea. So that's Jane Q. Public. who go, wow, and they learn something. And in doing so, the totality of our history, let's just take our country and our population, fills out a little more. There are all of these individual stories that trickle out, and you go, I had no idea. The Navajo code talkers, years ago, a couple decades ago, and everybody went, who knew there was these Navajo code talkers? Who knew about the women of Bletchley Park in World War II? They were a key reason that the Allies cracked Enigma, the German code that enabled us to win the war. The Native American women who made substantial, just quietly and individually, I don't know if it'll ever make it to some big silver screen or whatever, but those stories are there. The suffragettes, that movie's still not really been made in terms of hitting big screen or whatever. There's these little pieces that over time trickle out. And in doing so, we round out and we learn, and the totality of our history, good, bad, and ugly, it's our history. It's our collective story. And when you just take that big construct and you just neck it down to an individual family, let's say, or an individual organization, and as somebody will sit and will write their story, now you're adding and you are completing another piece so that the fullness of a history and of a story are known. And it's not lost. It becomes a part. It's part of our human record as individuals, as families, as organizations, as a society. All of the way we slice and dice and organize ourselves as humans, it fills those things out and creates even more opportunities for us to connect with each other, to understand each other, to empathize with each other, and to see the other person's perspective and want to work in concert with as humans, and our souls work together and be together on this journey and not at odds and at conflict with each other or out of fear or whatever it may be, the things that drive us apart. That's my answer for you as to the whole imposter syndrome, to bring it full circle back to your question, is because it's not about, no, I just don't fundamentally accept that I don't have a story and I don't have anything to add and I couldn't possibly be as good, write as well, have something important to say, fill in the blanks, whatever they all are. It's not true. It's just flat not true. It's what we have absolutely is an important missing piece of the totality of our humanity and our existence together in this journey, in this experience that we're going through together.
You brought up something. I know you had one ready, but yeah. I want to hit on something there because it's really interesting. Because talking about sharing your story, I totally agree with all of that. But there's this comparison that came to mind that I think it's really interesting. That I'd be sad if we didn't at least explore a little bit. Which I'll take like the social media example. Everyone has the voice. We can all go on Twitter. We can get out there, and there's this little bit of this feeling sometimes where it's not necessarily like
X.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
With the times there.
Sorry, old man. Yeah. But there's not necessarily this idea of like, well, Otis shouldn't have a voice, but it's like, well, maybe sometimes we need to put a little bit more thought in before we, make shout that out to the town square. Well, how do you think that plays in with what we're talking about with writing? Because I think there's an interesting idea of you should tell and you should pour the story and all of that, and then there's also a little bit of a responsibility to tell the story well. I don't know. How would you put that? I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So there's some there's some apples and oranges in there. Social media is a beast unto itself. There are absolutely some people who I think are what they put out into the universe using a social media tool. It's a tool. Are able to do so and remain authentic and relatable or not relatable, doesn't really matter, but they are their authentic selves.
Mhm.
Can we ever be really sure about that? Because, how much maybe for some potential celebrity or maybe not a celebrity may have some sort of some sort of a PR image management person behind the scenes, pulling the puppet strings for what gets posted and all that. I don't know. Is that how real though? For me, social media, any of the platforms they are tools. They are not venues for the creation, for creativity and self authorship and literature. If we're talking writing in that construct, there are beautiful things that are out there. Absolutely. I like to think so. For example, Viola Davis, she's one of my favorite actors. I think she is having read her book and having, and again, who knows how much of her book is her own versus ghost written or whoever. I don't know. But it comes through to me as very authentic. And, if you follow her on Instagram, for example, there is some genuineness that tracks in parallel with my experience with her book. So, I'm more disposed towards thinking there's a good bunch of authenticity there. And besides the fact she's brilliant, it's clear from listening to her, watching her, reading her and stuff. That's someone that I enjoy hearing from and maybe picking up some nuggets along the way. And there are many others, certainly like that. There are far more charades, on social media. And, there certainly, as we all know, and this is, something that I've put the brakes on significantly of all of the devastating effects. And I have a family member, a young teenager who is existing, I should say, as a consequence of the devastating effects of social media. She's 17 now. And it's been, her teenage years have just been horrific for her, thanks to social media. So it's a tool. It's a tool. It is rarely, in my view, is it are they mechanisms for true creative self-expression, whether it's storytelling or any other, even videos or whatever. I am not a huge social media person for that reason. I see it more, in my case, for the things that I'm doing as more of a marketing tool. And the book project that I'm working on, just quite honestly, we don't even have the time to attempting to keep up with just a couple basic social media platforms. So we're not the model of social media brilliance out there.
You're right. It was very apples to oranges. I'm glad we dissected that, because I was like, there's an interesting comparison there. But yeah, it's very apples to oranges. You're right.
Well, and so a lot of thoughts on that in bringing us back around, because I think it's how you write, and you touched on this. If you believe that something I say, because I truly believe this, otherwise you wouldn't see all the stuff that I've put out over the years. But if you truly believe that something I say, write down, record, post, that somebody somewhere will see that and it will help them, then that should be motivation enough.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think the dichotomy, if you will, is the tool can also be the block, the impediment.
Yes.
Because if we write and then post, now I have it's gone out to possibly help somebody, whether it's evergreen. I mean, social media is still technically it's out there forever.
Yeah.
Correct. Right.
But if I do it and then I check it, like somebody was saying earlier, if I check it and see how many views or
Right.
likes, and
Right.
that's the justification,
Right.
then I'm not doing it right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's, and I'm going to bring this all the way back around to what I learned. Watch this one, folks. Watch. Because what I learned is you can't have light without darkness.
That's right.
And you know what? I can't share what I know to a larger audience without social media. And social media can provide me that darkness if I allow it.
Correct.
But I can also, like some of the weird comments that we get on this show.
Yep.
All right, Dr. Phil's brother.
You got it. Yeah. I'm apparently Dr. Phil's brother.
And Hulk Hogan's cousin. That's another one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Hulk Hogan's cousin.
Yes, that would be, I can see
You
that.
can see it, right?
So, but if I use those as an impediment, or even in a weird sort of way in my book, of a juice to get me to go do more, like, how dare you, and be one of those people, then I'm defeating the whole purpose
Right.
of what I'm doing.
Right.
And that's the beauty. I'll go back to, you're at 40,000 feet, or you got to be at 45. Can you go up to 45 and see that?
Sure, there's plenty of airplanes that go that high, but
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
you can see the Terminator at 33,000 feet, whatever. Yeah.
There we
It's
All right. I'll keep an eye out. I'll make sure I get a window seat next time I'm going. And
I'll send you a picture so you know what to look for.
there you go. That's what I'm talking about. But I can't see. There is no darkness without light, and there's no light without darkness. That's the beauty of it, and that's a great reminder for me to what I learned today. Cam, how about you? What'd you learn?
Yeah, for me, I loved, Eileen, you said this of eliminating should. I think that's really good. One that people throw around a lot is the, I don't have to do this. I get to do this. I'll be honest, that's one. And for whatever reason, and Eileen, you talk like this, so I know you'll relate. For whatever reason, that didn't sit right with my jargon. I never really quite latched onto that one. The eliminating should, I think, sits better with my jargon. I don't know why. My perception of what words mean. I'm like, that one makes more sense. But of like not having that be the reason you don't take action. I think I've talked about it before of like the perfectionism idea. I'll throw out my buddy Norman, good friend, our old podcast producer, for this joke. But we going fishing and he's like, well, we got to get the right spot and we got to drive up to the mountains. We got to do this. And I was like, I'm going to go fishing today. And what happens is if you just go fishing, then you keep going fishing and you wind up getting better at it in the long run and you actually enjoy it. And it's all those kind of things. Whereas if you just keep, well, we should do this. We should find the right spot. We should find the right lure. We should do research. We should make sure I use the word should each time. But it's like we get all those things, then that becomes your excuse to not take any action at all. So I really like the idea of eliminating that should from things.
Eileen, how about you? What'd you learn?
Should can the should. That's really what I usually say.
Eileen, what'd you learn?
Wow. Geez. What a great conversation. I learned you look like Hulk Hogan's cousin, I guess, huh?
He wishes he was this big.
Guys, I'm actually okay. I was going to say I genuinely don't know. Okay,
he's a big dude.
All right, I wasn't sure if that was all camera angles or something.
Yeah, I really liked your the micro versus and I'm already forgetting. I'm sorry. Do you call it the macro? The macro. Okay. Yeah, I really like that. That helps. That put several things clicked in my head with that for just not just another way to say the same thing in a different word or whatever, but it created a visual change in terms of looking at things, and another tool, if you will, another practice to be able to sift and filter and deal with the tsunami of micros that flood in. the door
And
every day and in your inbox every day and all of those.
I was just going to add, because talking about writing and sharing your story, that's the big thing. Is as you share your story, your perspective, your particular language, it's not just saying it in a different way, but it's like you can connect to it from a different perspective.
Yes.
Like whether or not that is truly, like, I'm not gonna. You've called me an economist sometimes. I don't really call myself one, but it's like that comes from my economics classes. Like, is that really an economics idea? No, but for whatever reason, the microeconomics, macroeconomics is how I interpreted that piece of wisdom. So it's like all of those little perspectives. Not only is it helpful because it might, somebody else might understand that perspective and not the other ones, but also the other thing that I always add to that is it widens it a bit, and that slightly different perspective sometimes can help you to understand, your own thoughts on things a little bit more. So I just had to add that there because I think it really rounds out what we've been talking about a bunch.
Yes. What he said.
Eileen, tell us about the book project. How do people learn more about it? Get on the follow train for
thank you for that opportunity. I'm so glad to be able to share this because this is very much it's so become so front of mind for the team right now. The year 2026 will mark 50 years of women attending the military service academies. Air Force Academy, the West Point, the United States Military Academy, the Naval Academy, the Coast Guard Academy, and actually the Merchant Marine Academy this year is 50 years for them. We're celebrating the Merchant Marine Academy women Academy graduates this year, but there's a collective effort underway for across all the services to make 2026 and activities and stuff. Well, a group of us Air Force Academy women came together, a year and a half ago at least now, and organized ourselves as USAFA Women Writers, USAFA, United States Air Force Academy, USAFA Women Writers, and our website is usafawomenwriters.org. And we are writing the book to tell the untold story of the 50 years of women at the Air Force Academy. It's not a book about what it's like to be a cadet at the Academy, or should you send your kid to the Academy or your daughter to the Academy. It's none of that. This is the untold story of this group of women, and there are several thousand grads and non-grads, and we went out and put out a call for submissions and received tons. We were swamped with stories, and we asked them for stories from any time, from any aspect, any part of their life, not just when I was a cadet stories, so that we can tell a singular story with a single narrative arc of the collective we of this incredible group of women who changed our country, changed the way this country conducts operations, keeps the peace, fights wars, and does all of the things that are part of the reason we took the oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And again, whether they graduated or not, we received submissions, and we are writing to tell that collective singular story using the words and the stories of these incredible individual women who represent all of us. And yes, some of them are cadet stories about when I was a cadet, but they are mind-blowing in their inspiration, their awesomeness, staggering in the peaks of joys and achievements, and heart-wrenching and breaking in the depths of grief and loss. We have combat stories. We have, women that have died in combat, women that are first, not just the first 4-star general or the first astronaut or all the things you typically hear about. One of the women on my team was the first in her family to ever graduate from college. And she went to the Air Force Academy and graduated, We have all kinds of firsts. We have women that were, yes, we have stories about women that were some of the first to fly combat aircraft. but we have women who were the first to actually fly or serve in combat before it was legal, quote unquote, to operate, for women to operate in combat. So there's just women, incredible stories of what these women have done, whether they're in business, in industry, nonprofits, families, children, no children, all of it. All of it is all of us. And we are writing that story and knitting all of that together into the whole picture of this group of women who literally, we changed our country. We changed the force structure of this country to the point where this country's national defense infrastructure would cease to be able to function without women. We changed the way decision makers think. We changed the way decisions get made, just because men and women go about things differently. And it's long past time that we stop thinking about all the ways that a service or an academy or some other institution, not necessarily military, but across the board. These are stories that women can relate to in any aspect or any industry of life that they are in. And it's time that we stop thinking about and talking about the ways that some industry, whether it's engineers or medicine or the legal practice or whatever, have accommodated or changed or whatever for women. And we start looking at, again, the totality of what all people, all humans bring to the table in any aspect, any domain, any problem solving, any whatever it is, and see, and in military terms, we talk about the force multipliers, and see, what this incredible group of women who, when you talk to, many of them say, I don't have a story. I didn't do anything special. And they all say, we just did our job. That's all we did. We just did our job. But it's in the doing of that. And throughout history, this goes back all the way to the Revolutionary War, when women who served in the Revolutionary War, another untold story that's not known, and in every conflict, declared war and otherwise since. Our history is incomplete without the totality of the stories that create that history and that reality, without all of those being told and coming together. And we are going to tell this particular piece of that history, and publish that. It'll be published in 2026, the 50 years year. And yeah, we absolutely, somewhat jokingly, but I'm telling you, we're getting together at the end of January for another writers get together. And we talk to each other about, okay, so who knows Oprah and who knows Michelle Obama and who knows, because this is another story that is going to be told. And it's the same, the West Point women and the Naval Academy women, they are these are women that just professionals, brilliant, who did their jobs, did it well, whether they spent 40 years in uniform or 4 years, doesn't matter, that have brought to our lives and their own lives and the totality of our lives, when you put it all together and look at it, an untold story that it is time it be told.
So is there a website, a link, some way that somebody could...
Yeah,
as they're all going to follow the 10X Your Team show.
As I said, our website is USAFA Women Writers, USAFA, USAFAWomenWriters.org. Go there.
I got to make fun of you because she said it earlier. You missed it.
Wow.
Okay.
Go there. Thank you. Thanks for the second plug. Are you kidding? That's awesome. You'll read about us. You'll see what we're doing. You'll meet the team. You'll meet the writers and what I call the magic makers. And the best we can to keep up with getting it out on the website of who we are and what we're doing. We're in the slog right now of writing. It's not the sexy part. There's not, much I can tell you about, we're we're up to our hair follicles right now in all of the writing all the chapters, version 1. Working with our editor to continue to develop the story into a single narrative arc, as we say, to take these individual dozens and dozens and dozens of individual stories that came in and put them together into the story of this group of heroines and their journey together over these 50 years.
That's awesome.
It is. It's super cool.
Looking forward to it. Eileen, thank you so much for your time today and hanging out with us and sharing this great project that y'all have going on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really been a wonderful to get to spend this time with you and see you again.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Eileen Isola, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next time.